Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. It is I, Emily Sophia, or M. Mighty Sophia, here to break down for you guys the second official episode of Better Call Saul. We are at Season 1, Episode 2, Mijo. So, spoiler alert, before we dive into the mad thick of things, as I will be bearing all in this review, and as always, if there is anything that I fail to specifically address in this episode, I would be more than happy for you guys to take it to the comments and we shall continue the mayhem there. And I also thank you for bearing with me, as I do not yet have a soundtrack or video intro or outro for my Better Call Saul vlogs yet, but they shall be coming. So thanks for just chilling back and listening to me yak at you for a good long time. And without further ado, let us actually kick it this time. So I knew from the first episode that I was freaking in love with this show, and the second episode only cemented that love for me as we were gifted some truly legendary moments that by all means live up to the show's glorious predecessor. I mean, there is so much in Better Call Saul that is reminiscent of Breaking Bad, but it's not that Better Call Saul is not establishing its own identity. It's that it's expanding the universe that we came to know and love back in the day, and it's just taking it and exploding it in every possible direction, and now there's just so many new angles that we get to explore and new moral ambiguousness and compromises afoot that makes life so much fun. So I'm going to attempt to break down some of the finest and most fabulous moments in this episode, of which there were many. And I'm just saying that that scene in the desert, that goes down in the history books. I read a review about this episode, and the reviewer was saying that it kind of, for them, it took away from the tension to know that both Tuco and Saul / Jimmy were going to make it out of the situation alive. But for me, that didn't even register. I wasn't thinking like, oh, well, obviously it's all gonna turn out okay. I mean, just the entire way that the scene and everything leading up to it was crafted had me at the edge of my seat, because we're still just getting to know who Jimmy McGill is and what his game is. We know that the guy's got the skills to kind of sort of pay the bills, but I mean, he's got the skills. He delivers, and we see him in all his underappreciated glory left and right. But it's all about what drives the tension and makes the conflict so delicious and heart-stopping to watch is that it's like a very volatile and violent game of chess. We want to see how it's all going to go down, because that has implications for the future with which we are already familiar, but it doesn't really matter. I don't care that I know who walks away from it, because I mean, there's always going to be, when it comes to Breaking Bad, we know this to be true, and I know it's going to be true in this show, there is always the unexpected collateral damage, and we see the things that these characters have to see, the things that break and destroy and shatter them, and sort of enrich them and color them and make them all the more fascinating, and it gives us so much more to sink our teeth into. So it's like, I don't care if I know the future, I am going to be invested in the here and now and scared as hell for these characters. And that is the way that I felt with the whole situation at Abuelita's crib getting punked. I mean, it was just, we all knew that situation was going to go down horribly wrong, because it was all too promising and exciting, and there was this groovy funk jam playing as the skateboard guys are getting ready to do the business, and we knew that there was going to be a left turn ahead, and that there freaking was. And it was really cool to see how the episode kind of came full circle too, how we go from this whole situation that Jimmy magically diffuses to Tuco's compadre Nacho comes to approach Jimmy on the side, you know, pays him a visit in his office, and he's like, hey, let's actually get the Kettlemans back, you know. Let's finish what you started. Steal from the thieves. There's nothing that they can fall back on, you know, get that satisfaction. And to sort of see how this whole situation comes back around. And what it ultimately leads to is Jimmy adamantly stating, like, desperately trying to cling to his integrity in a situation where we're almost positive that he's going to take the guy up on this offer. I mean, it's just too good to pass up. Not to mention, you kind of owe the dude, and you recognize that, and that's pretty good way to make good on his helping you get out of Tuco-induced death. What he says that was very impactful to me, and I'm sure it was for many of you guys, is he states like that I'm a lawyer, not a criminal. And so automatically, we think back to the Jesse Pinkman days, but 2 and 2 together. Nah, you're not a criminal. You could be a criminal lawyer. And that's kind of the huge irony that I love that they leave off on that note, because we see exactly where he's going to go someday as Saul Goodman, but in the here and now, he's trying to push back, and he's trying to stand up for something. It's some nebulous purpose, because we see all the masks that he puts on day in and day out, and it's showtime in front of the urinals, you know, like, we see this guy, we see the face that he puts up, but here he is at his most vulnerable in his place of work, whilst his non-existent office is being painted with non-existent colors and etc., etc. And yet, so here he is presented with the opportunity of a lifetime from a guy who definitely has the means to enact some harm, but is rather extending a hand in business. You know, he was the guy who said that it would be bad business to off a lawyer. He's also the guy, speaking about Nacho, that is, he's also the guy who saw through Jimmy's layers upon layers of ruses, attempting to go from I'm a lawyer, don't kill me, we can put this all behind us, to being FBI agent Jeffrey Steele in what, like, Operation Kingbreaker, back to a lawyer. And I love how hung up Tuco was on the fact that he's the king, and we know that someday that will kind of sort of be true. And he just might be unseated from power. But at this point, this is the pre-power trip in Tuco. We see all the qualities that lead up to the position that he takes on until Heisenberg shows up on the scene. But anyways, taking it all back, it's so fascinating to see how these old characters are being incorporated in a brand new way. And again, there's so much about the way that the show is written that makes it so that we're really not as concerned about the fact that we know where things are going. There's still so much open space to be explored. And I mean, Bob Odenkirk, what a dude, what a guy. He is getting up there to Bryan Cranston levels of unadulterated brilliance, because you just see the way that he deftly maneuvers these impossible situations, talks the two ginger boys down from a death sentence to 6 months probation. You know, like, he really is the best lawyer ever. And just to see how he jives with Tuco, he is able to conjure up this, you know, this madness that is compatible with the madness of Tuco. And yet, yeah, what Jimmy offers in the situation, as he's trying to get everybody out of this scot-free, he sort of becomes this anchor that Tuco can cling to, the whole "you are fair, you are just. Clearly these guys are guilty for calling your abuelita a biznatch. That is not a thing to be done. Make the punishment fit the crime," you know? I think what was hilarious about that, with how hung up Tuco is on these ridiculously, absurdly violent fantasies of vengeance. And like, it kind of reminded me of Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, because Jimmy's trying to paint all these metaphors, and I mean, he's not trying to speak in riddles per se, but it's like, he's offering these very clear opportunities for Tuco to dial it back, and Tuco just gets more and more amped up, like, yeah, we're doing this. We're pulling their tongues through their throats. I'm glad we had this chat. Like, that is the trajectory of these guys' thoughts. And we got to see a lot of cool aspects of his character in just the gentle, loving care that he has for his grandmother, and his defensive nature towards her, and that desire for justice. But then we also see where all that is going to lead for him, and his desire to have power. And what he gets to learn from Jimmy is, you know, how to be a leader, what to do with your power, what to do with the tools in the toolbox. You don't necessarily just bash in the skulls, you know. There's other ways to go about things. So that scene, I could talk about it all day. I'm totally gonna go back and watch that and just drink up every moment of that. But what I loved about the way that the rest of the episode unfolded is that we got to see Jimmy kind of get back into his lifestyle. And of course, so he's on this date with this gorgeous older woman, and they're sipping on cocktails in the bar, and he is hung up on this man just around this gorgeous woman's shoulder. You know, we get these extreme close-ups of the lipstick on her straw and of her cleavage, and it's like we see that he is so desperately trying to take himself away from what just transpired, and we saw how traumatized he seemed to be as the leg breaking took place. And then we see that he's hung up on the breaking of the breadsticks just over her shoulder, and how, you know, he's knocking back the drinks, knocking back all the silly fruity cocktails, and he is just so caught up in the sound of the snapping, and then and yeah, so we get to see just how all this gets in his head, and he has this really deep and abiding sense of consequence, which at what point does he really kind of surrender that and really give in to the Saul Goodman-ness that we see later in Breaking Bad, when he is so zealously representing Walter White, you know? But yeah, and then we see him stumble home drunk. He forgets to ground himself and leave his cell phone in the mailbox, and Chuck is quite distraught at the situation, and wake up and have this dialogue, and we see that there are cracks in this relationship that Jimmy has with his very vulnerable brother, and they both have their own forms of vulnerability that they're grappling with together that makes them a very odd and kind of volatile pair in the end, I fear, as Jimmy is adamantly insisting that Chuck take off the space blanket, and just over and over and over he just keeps saying the same thing. It was really interesting to see how repetition was used in this episode too, in terms of the things that are said, and the things that like, because I think, what was it, like the prosecutor that Jimmy kept running into in the whole public defender montage, it was like, it's like Petty with a Prior or something like that, you know. And so we get this there is this repetition to his life that sort of starts to feel like a form of insanity, you know, and just maybe it's all going to culminate in this moment where Jimmy's like, okay, let's take this to the next level. Yeah, because what's interesting is that we think back to what he said in the previous episode about how money is never beside the point, money is the point. And he is directly offered money by Nacho at the very end of the episode when Nacho is offering to actually go after the family that Saul was originally intending to, but he was only wanting to get their business. He's not a crook, you know. So it's really interesting to see this kind of tug of war that's going on in this character, because we know him so well as the morally colorblind lawyer who will put himself out on any kind of whim for almost any kind of compensation. I mean, maybe, like, you know, we see later on in Breaking Bad that he kind of pulls back a bit, as one would have to in this situation, but to see him in this place before it all goes down, and to just see how incredibly forbearing, that there's just so many neat sides to his character, and the way that Bob Odenkirk plays Jimmy is just with such finesse and sensitivity. I mean, if you just lock in on his face, that is where all the stress that I was experiencing was coming from, I feel like. Just the sheer, like, watching his expressions and just the emotive. He is an emotive locomotive. That much is true. But I also what I love about the way that the creators of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, I love the way that they do montage sequences. So we get to see into the less than glamorous routine of Jimmy McGill, the mighty public defender, stickler for justice. We get to see him in his instant coffee machine and every day pumping himself up in the dingy restroom, and then just breaking onto the floor, cutting a rug as he is going for any client, every client. He gives this game his all. We see him bring a Beanie Baby cat to the lady who hands out the public defender assignments. We get to see, it's just all these little facets of who he is and what he does. And we see his energy wax and wane, and when he really feels like he's on top of the world, which I think deep down it all really correlates with, you know, having to deal with Mike the sticker Nazi over in the parking booth. I love those exchanges. It's Mike the sticker Nazi versus the stickler for justice. I think that needs to be like a graphic novel or a comic, which I would love to read. But I think it's just such a perfect way to hem the character of Mike into this universe, because we kind of know what he's all about too, and I think he's going to take on a bigger role in the days to come. But as for now, I will do with their dynamic anti-duo for as long as possible, because it makes me happy. Oh, this show makes me happy. I just had a welling up of tears in my eyes just because I'm so delighted to have this show to talk about, and it's just so wonderful. I don't know. I also, just to see into the routine of Jimmy was a really, really big piece of this episode. Seeing him come in through the salon, and he steals the cup, which I think he was forbidden to take a cup in the last episode. It's like for customers only, and he's like a tenant in this building, and he can't even use a free plastic cup, but he slips away with one, and thinking that he's not going to have any business, he kicks back, pulls out the office futon, pulls out the personal vodka, and drinks it from the plastic cup that he stole from the nail salon. It's like, this is where we're at right now. And we think about that moment that Jimmy tells Chuck that he's not backsliding. This is not slipping Jimmy. Jimmy is getting up on his own 2 legs, which he's very lucky to have. I mean, anybody was lucky to walk away with limbs in this episode, I dare say. But yeah, it's just, it's fascinating to see this kind of sense of integrity that Jimmy clings to when he kind of speaks out against Chuck's electromagnetic sensitivity and the strange unspoken illness, which I don't think Jimmy believes in. And we see him, you know, when he sticks up for the 2 skater guys, it's like, why? Why is he invested? You know, it's kind of reminiscent of the times when Walter would stick his neck all the way out for Jesse. Although I know that there's a lot of really interesting kind of emotional ties there, but it's like, what is Jimmy really all about in getting to know his character in terms of the things that we think he will do and the things that he doesn't do? It's really interesting. It's interesting for those of us coming in who've seen Breaking Bad before and kind of having that reversal of expectations, but I love it. I really, really do, and I can't wait for the rest. So thank you guys so much for watching this review. Like I said, if there's anything major that I forgot to address, I'd be more than happy to chat it up with you guys in the comments. I did review the first episode. There's all kinds of things happening on my channel right now. Check things out. It's lots of fun. I read a comment somewhere to somebody talking about how Jimmy McGill would probably fare pretty well in Westeros, you know. I think everybody could use their own Jimmy. Like, what a stud. What a magic man. Stickler for justice, dude. I tell you what. So that was all fine and fun and well. The best lawyer ever is on the up and up, and we'll see where the path turns darker, I suppose, and what he tells Nacho in the end, you know. Guy wrote his phone number on the matchbox, so the situation is, you know, could potentially be fiery, but we'll see how it all plays out. So yeah, thank you guys so much, and as always, I will be back before you